My name is Norma. I'm from Northeast Tennessee. When I was 4 years old, my parents went to a friend's house for a gathering, and the adults were inside and the kids were outside. And when I went outside to play, there was only 2 teenage boys there, and they suggested we play hide and seek. And so dusk turned to dark, and the 2 boys actually tackled me to the ground and sexually abused me. And then once I was 11 years old, I was sexually abused again. And then when I was 14, I was sexually abused by a leader in a church. And this was just something I kept a secret. I didn't tell anyone. I was actually afraid to tell anyone about the leader of the church because I was afraid that people would just think that I was some troubled teen and that I was just trying to get attention. When I was 18 years old, even though I'd been to church my whole life, I actually got saved. I just really understood that, it wasn't about what I do, it was about what Christ did for me when He died on the cross and was buried and arose again. And, I put my faith in Him for my salvation and not myself. And I think sometimes we think, as a Christian, if once you're saved, all your problems go away, but they don't. For the next 2 years, it was really tough because even though I didn't voluntarily participate in the abuse, I still felt the guilt and shame over it. So if, the pastor would preach about not having sex before marriage or adultery, I would just feel really guilty over it. And I also got married young at 18 and had 1 child. And the marriage wasn't doing well, and I went to my husband one day and I just said, I want out of the marriage, I want a divorce. And he became really angry and told me that if I tried to leave, that he would have his whole family testify against me and say I was an unfit mother and take my child from me. And I believed that he could actually do that. And I really just fell into a deep depression. And I just remember one day writing a suicide note and taking a gun and just, sitting on the side of the bed and putting the gun to my head. I just was at a point I just didn't want to live anymore. And the only thing I could think about was my kid, and I thought, I can't do this because I would walk through hell for my kid. And I thought, you know what, I'll just keep on walking through it. And after a few years, I found the courage, to leave the marriage, and I went through a divorce and bankruptcy. And soon after that, my dad became sick and he was dying. And so I just really became a workaholic. And, on the weekends we would go and party and drink. And I was hanging around with people I shouldn't have been hanging around and, just doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And I absolutely wasn't going to church. And I remember moving from Kentucky to Tennessee and my son coming in one night and telling me, Mom, I'm going to the local church to the youth service. And I said, which church is it? He said, it's Newcomb Baptist Church. And I just felt so compelled to go to this church. And I remember just walking through the doors of the church and just looking around and just thinking, okay, who's the pervert? Because in my experience, any church that I went to, there was some man that would try to be inappropriate with me. I went to church there, for a few months, and I just started to realize that, all these people were really good Christian people, and all the men were very good Christian men. And, I just give credit to that church for restoring my faith in the church. Now, I never lost my faith in God, but I had lost my faith in the church. And one thing that started to happen is I just really started studying the Bible and just, developing a relationship with God that I, hadn't really had. Because I'd only went to church when my mom told me I had to go on holidays and Mother's Day. And so I just started to really just dive into the Word. And one of the things I wanted to learn about was gratitude. And I remember reading a book, and it was talking about, being thankful for different things. And one of the things that it said that I should be grateful for is people that hurt me. And I thought, I'm not going to be thankful somebody sexually abused me. That's crazy. And I didn't understand why anybody would even write that. Then after, I put that book down, it just seemed like everything pointed toward forgiveness. I mean, if a preacher preached a sermon, if I talked to people, if I read anything, heard anything, it was all about forgiveness. I finally heard Joyce Meyer's testimony, and she was talking about how her father had sexually abused her whole life. And once he was older, she actually took care of her father and led him to the Lord. And I thought, man, this woman's radical. I thought, I don't even know if I could do that. But one thing she said in her testimony that really resonated with me was she was talking about how weak her father was because, you know, he gave into his sin of lust. And I never thought about the people that abused me being weak. You know, they were always a controlling, dominating figure in my mind. So once she described him as this weak person, then I really just started to look at the people that abused me as weak people. And I was just able just to slowly forgive each person. And I just remember, you know, once I forgave them, it was just like I was just so free. And I just remember just being just like a burden just lifted off of me. You know, and I thought, great, you know, I can, you know, move on with my life now. A few months after that, when I was at home and I was, you know, lying in bed, I was home alone, and, you know, I just heard God say to me, you know, all right, now be thankful for them. And I just started pleading with God, like, please don't make me do this. These people, you know, they hurt me. They took away my childhood. They raped me. I don't understand. I forgave them. Can't that be enough? And the only thing that I could hear God say to me was, in all things, give thanks. In all things, give thanks. And so the next morning I got up and, you know, I was thanking God for different things in my life. And, you know, and I just said, thank you, Lord, for the people that hurt me. They made me stronger. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really mean it. But, you know, I was just doing what I was told to do, and I was really doing it on pure faith. And I didn't even understand why I was having to do it. And finally, I heard a sermon by T.D. Jakes, and he was talking about the difference of being free and free indeed. And he said, 2 prisoners escaped to prison. He said, they're free, but are they free indeed? And I thought, well, no, they would never be free indeed, because they would always be looking over their shoulder to their past. They would always be chained to their past. And then it dawned on me what I thought God was doing to me was actually what, you know, God had done for me. Was, you know, he released me from my past, because if I'm thankful for it, regardless of how bad it is, I'll never look back on it and be a victim of it. And so, you know, I was just free on a whole other level I didn't think that I could be. You know, so today, you know, I can say, you know, I am 100% healed and I'm free. You know, I always thought that sexual abuse would be like this scarlet letter that I would have to wear, the burden I would have to bear. You know, and I think God just wants me to give a message to people, you know, whether you're a woman or man that's been, you know, abused, sexually abused, that you don't have to have the burden. You can actually be free.